Hello, welcome to Trying Times, the show where we talk about life and some of the things that change during it, as well as some of those cringe moments, because why not? Can't leave the cringe moments out. Whether this is your first time listening or you've tuned in before, I do this little elevator pitch type thing at the beginning of each episode to introduce myself, so here we go. I don't know, I'm nervous. I've done this 4 other times now. Okay, here we go. Hi there. My name is Carmen, and I'm a creative in my mid-20s who's just trying to find her way through life and wanted to chat about it while trying, because why not? I think personally it makes it a little bit better. It makes it not easier, but just, it's nice having that friend to chat with about things. So why not? That's how this show came to be. That's what we're doing. I think that was probably the most laid back and sounded the least like an actual elevator pitch out of all the ones I've done so far. But hi, and again, welcome to the show. To recap the last couple of episodes in a nutshell, I talked a lot about how certain things impact us as we grow, which is kind of just a given, naturally just happens. Specifically, though, things like music and TV, so what we watch and listen to, and how that changes over time, or at least for me, how that changed over time, and then also how that sometimes leads to certain phases in life. Like way back in grade 7 and 8 when I thought I was scene/emo and did not think that was a phase. Mom, you were right. It was just a phase. It came and it left. I don't know if it came quicker or if it left quicker, but it's gone. It's no longer here. So in the following episode, I got into what kind of films and television shows I enjoyed watching and still enjoy watching, as well as the ways in which media has slowly but surely begun to represent more backgrounds and cultures. If you've not yet listened to those episodes, definitely do check those out. Okay, so today's episode is still going to follow that theme of how certain things impact us as we grow, but today's thing, if you will, is culture, which I would like to preface with the fact that, this is going to be very light and fluffy, and nothing said here or expressed here is at all meant to be taken offensively in any matter. I don't think anything, obviously, I'm about to talk about or say is going to be offensive at all, but, it's just, I feel like easily a touchy subject and it can be perceived in so many different ways. So yeah, I just wanted to say that. In addition to talking a bit about culture, I'm also going to briefly touch on my surroundings growing up and that whole sort of thing, because obviously that does play a big part in anyone's growth, whether it's as an adult or just over the course of life, from being an adolescent to now in my mid-20s. So here we go. For anyone who is listening to this and does not know me already or know me like in person, I did that elevator pitch at the beginning of the episode, but obviously that does not describe much about me or my background necessarily. For instance, it doesn't paint a picture of what I look like at all. I did grow up in a Punjabi household with my mom and dad, an older sister and brother, and then, me, the youngest one, the surprise, if you will. At around, I think, 6 or 7 years old, we moved houses and went from a very diverse and multicultural neighborhood to one that was about 40 minutes away and predominantly white. So it went kind of like from city to country, suburban type thing. I don't know how to describe it, but if there's one thing I can say is that I never got tired of seeing cows and horses, so that is still exciting to me. I love seeing animals, so that's nice. But at this point in time, I'm a kid and I don't notice any differences necessarily in who I'm around, other than the fact that I'm not around my friends that I had before. But there's all these other kids that are around my age, so it's like that's all I really notice. But in a lot of instances, I think some of the kids that were around me realized quite a few differences in myself because I was different from anyone that they'd possibly seen before. So yeah, as a kid, I, didn't generally at all understand these differences or comments that might have been said, but to a degree, I think I could definitely feel that they did not feel right. As a kid, you just kind of try to brush that off and carry on with whatever it is that you're doing, or just life in general. Not too long after that move, I noticed and I started to feel less and less left out when I started to see more and more kids that looked like me, just kids from different backgrounds and cultures, and I felt kind of with that and making new friends and meeting more people and learning about different cultures, that little knot in my stomach lessened some days, and other days it was more prominent just because of, the ever-changing circumstances. None of which, by the way, like, I don't want to talk really about like any comments that I heard as like a kid or whatever, because like that's kind of just happened. There was one huge thing though that I noticed growing up, and it was that my parents definitely had me involved just at home so heavily, and like with family events and that kind of a thing. Just so through that involvement, obviously as a kid you can kind of see and get a general understanding of like your culture, more so by viewing and being part of rather than through reading or schooling as a whole, which for me was a huge thing. Like I'm just very hands-on as a learner. So I just wanted to say that, but also say that I think no matter which way you learn about your culture, that's totally okay. There's no right or wrong. If you went to a school and you learned through that, that's incredible. If you learned in any other way, that's still incredible. All that matters is that you're still being open-minded and asking questions and willing to learn. So I just want to put that out there. My parents didn't fully feel this, I guess, need to push curriculum type lessons or ideologies fully onto me, because they knew one day that when I was a little older, I would come to them with all the questions, which, believe me, at 25, I still do. I don't think you can ever fully learn everything about a subject. I think you can always know a lot about a subject, but it's impossible to know every single thing, I feel. So it never hurts to ask questions. And, like, there's always more. There's always many different perspectives, too. So it's never too early or too late to start learning about something and to start asking questions. Like, that whole belief in learning when you feel most curious and have that will to learn, I think was really wonderful to have, because it allowed me to just ask as I thought or wondered just freely, rather than maybe, just for me, like I said, that whole lesson based form of learning wasn't really like something that I benefited from a whole lot. So that obviously changed as I got older, but that's because my attention span fully also changed. That's a whole other thing though. So anyways, I feel with that backstory, as vague or as descriptive as it may have been perceived, you kind of get a feel for what I'm talking about generally. So, just growing up wanting to learn more, also kind of dealing with that bit of pushback, I guess. At least that's what it felt like. And to be honest, it sometimes still feels like that. Like, it feels like I was just caught between a rock and a very hard place overall, and it was odd and kind of unsettling. And like I said, sometimes that feeling kind of reappears. It's kind of interesting how that circumstance of your surrounding and much more can just impact your learning style too. So I don't want this episode to be depressing or tough to listen to at all. That was, like I said, just vaguely kind of going over a lot of stuff in a very quick and brushed over kind of way. I want this to kind of be something that you could either relate to, learn from, or just listen to all around. Maybe it's providing a different perspective for you. And I don't know, if that's something that you find interesting, then stick around. And if not, then thank you for checking this out so far. I don't think the way that simultaneously, like, in which my culture impacted me and my surroundings impacted me differed from the way that many others grew up that I personally know, and overall just so many other people, which is why I thought this would be a really cool episode and kind of would be nice to touch on. I can say that once I grew past a few phases, like most kids growing up at the same time as me now, whenever, kids just go through so many phases and whatnot. Once I kind of grew past quite a few of them and felt a little more settled in myself, I was better able to understand my culture and, like I said, myself, and just generally like where I stood as a person. And again, I think I owe so much of that to my family for just allowing me to be myself, whatever that might have looked like at whatever time. It was just kind of like, okay, let her do what makes her feel comfortable and feel confident and explore, just express herself. And I don't think it probably wasn't until I was about 20 or 21 that I felt more interested in the religious aspect of Sikhism and just the cultural aspects that are all part of it as well, which I realize could sound very late to some, or possibly just like on route or on time for others, but that was kind of when that happened for me and when I really piqued an interest in learning more. So yeah, I'm not going to get too heavy into that, or generally the subject of religion, because that it can be heavier, but I just want to kind of provide that as like a finishing for that backstory, if you will. So one thing that never lessened though from growing up was my love for Punjabi food, which, like, if you've had it, you know. That's something that I know will never go away. And at many points in my life, whenever I'm away from home, it's become a way for me to feel comforted and like I'm at home, which is really fascinating to me. And aside from the food and everything else, there was one thing I always found fascinating as well, and that was Indian clothing. That was a very long segue to get into today's topic of how I really love this collaboration of Indian clothing and Western clothing. And when I say Western clothing, I hope we know I don't mean like actual legit like clothing from like the Western time. Like that's not what I'm getting into. I'm getting into like just more so, American clothing, if you will. And keeping up with those trends and simultaneously blending that with traditional clothing and just seeing both styles evolve and putting that together. I think that's so incredible within both, but obviously, especially Indian clothing, because it's kind of what we're touching a little bit more on. There are so many colors, literally all of them, it's endless, as with any other kind of clothing, I think personally. But there's just, you imagine all the colors, so many different kinds of cloths, so many different kinds of cuts, and you can put together anything imaginable and just rock it if you want to. And I love that about it so much. Like, there's really no limits to what a design could be. And so, naturally, growing up, I always found it beautiful and admired the work put into each piece of clothing, let alone a whole outfit. But obviously, as you're in your teen years or like just younger, possibly just a bit older, it happens sometimes for people at very different ages. That's totally fine. But it just feels a little tough sometimes to wear anything. And like I feel like when you're younger and you're going through like awkward developmental years, you just feel more awkward about wearing certain things. So I dealt with my own bits of lower confidence at times in relation to my body. And now I'm just like, if I could go back in time and shake my younger self's shoulders and just tell her she was beautiful, I would. It's crazy how kids can be so down on themselves, and that too at such a vulnerable and naive age. That's not what today's episode's about, but it's just that plays a huge part in it, and how you choose to present yourself and what you feel comfortable with wearing. So though at the time I felt comfortable wearing whatever else it was that might have been part of whatever phase and didn't think too much on that, this was kind of something I found myself thinking a little bit more on. And because of that whole confusion of like body, and at the time at least only really seeing very thin, like stick thin women on screen in Indian clothing, it made me feel super confused about myself, just about how to dress me and what felt comfortable to me. And I think it was around the age of like 16, I was like, okay, this is okay. And so on, it became like a little bit easier, just bit by bit. So now at 25, I wear absolutely whatever crosses my mind pretty much, and I just enjoy it. And way back in the early 2000s, it's easy to see that there wasn't really a full spectrum of representation or body positivity at the time. And even now, that's still very slowly developing, but it is so much better to have something rather than nothing at all, which is what it felt like then. For me, like developing at a younger age, I was just like, what is happening here? It just felt really awkward. Like, just walked very uncomfortably. It showed very clearly in my body language, which now I'm just like, that doesn't bother me anymore. This is how I am. And like, just feeling more comfortable in yourself. That's a huge thing too with how you wear clothes. So there weren't a lot of people, from what I remember, in mainstream media representing these kinds of clothes or anything, or these colors or patterns, whatever it may be. And so there was one person who I thought was really cool with how they fused together westernized clothing and Indian patterns, and that person was MIA. And she had very interesting ways of fusing her music sounds all together too, which was just like the coolest thing at the time. I still love her music, just gonna put that out there. But she played around with a lot of vibrant colors, very static types of patterns, and then later on created what I believed was her own clothing line. And through this, she printed a lot of these traditional and new wave kinds of designs together across t-shirts and leggings and sweaters. So it was really interesting to see people wearing these styles in like just a casual setting opposed to the event type setting, or just strictly through Indian clothing, kind of like what I'd become accustomed to seeing them in. So it created a bit of, I guess, normalization, and inspired more generally to be experimental with these, which I think is so important. And I still think we need to do a little bit more, but there's been so many designers and just influencers throughout this age of digital media and new age media and all of this that have kind of helped to make this dream, I guess, a reality. And I think it's really cool for so many people to observe and see and have that inspire them and whatnot. So, specifically in the surge of social media, there have been so many different styles coming forth, but furthermore, so many wonderful, might I add, wonderful creators who have put their heart into expressing themselves. And at times, that includes this really cool fusion I'm talking about of obviously traditional and modern blending. And so immediately one creator who comes to mind is Rowie Singh. She is this amazing makeup artist who expresses this collaboration of the two worlds primarily through obviously makeup looks. Like I just said, she's an artist. She literally is though. She's incredible. If you haven't looked at her Instagram, please do. Her name is ROWISINGH. So yeah, go check her out. She has just so many posts that she's uploaded over a long time now that feature traditional pieces of jewelry that kind of like adorn her completed makeup look. And I don't know, it's just really cool to see that. It's literally like the cherry on top with a lot of it. And I think it's so cool. And she generally just has this amazing sense of creativity and style in the way that she pieces things together. I feel like, most people know of her. And if you don't, again, like I said, highly recommend checking her out on Instagram. But I think a cool thing to take away from her page overall is just that it's a huge reminder to not limit yourself or your imagination when it comes to your makeup. And try literally whatever you wish to try. She's great. I could not recommend her more. So in addition to talking about creators, there's another creator who I think is Canadian actually, which is exciting, representing Canada, and her name is Lucky Gill, better known as her username on Instagram as CRBEBY, which I believe is Crybaby, which if it is, I like that. That's one of my favorite songs by The Neighborhood. This creative has been spotted on TikTok going viral quite a few times with her beautiful take on so many trends, but specifically there's this one trend where you see someone in like casual clothes and then they like spin in a chair or something and then do a little glow up with like a really cool outfit or whatever. I described that trend so bad, like I just butchered the trend. Well, she's been recognized so many times for doing that specific trend, and hers are beyond little and beyond this world overall. Like, I just wish I could insert the TikTok right here, but you would only hear the music, so it makes no sense to do that. But she's really wonderful, and her jewelry, like I said, with Rowie, is very much always on point. She loves to play with the fusion, I think, of Punjabi accessories and Western clothing and kind of fuse the two together and play with very current trends. It's unlike anything I've seen anyone else do before. It's just like, it's so cool. I get excited to see whenever she posts like a new outfit or something or makeup look because she's just so creative and overall has a really great sense of style. And she does not stray from playing with trends to push boundaries and create an awesome blend of those two worlds. And I just look up to that. I think that's so cool. So yeah, go check her out. Her username, like I said, is CRBEBY on Instagram. And yeah, she's just very cool, super creative. And yeah, that's that. Like I was saying in the last episode, I was talking about Mindy Kaling. I love Mindy Kaling, we know this. And specifically that Diwali episode of The Office. To kind of bring that, I guess, into the context of this episode too, I could talk about, like the fact that it was a really cool introduction to just seeing more of that color print material on a mainstream show. Obviously, opposed to just seeing it in one specific category of media. But naturally, it was presented differently. And like there's just so much more I want to say about Indian clothing and the styles and the evolution, but this would be like over an hour long, so I'm going to keep it at that. And even just something like that with The Office, like those seemingly little moments I feel like are big wins and in my opinion pretty iconic. So yeah, to end this episode, here's a shout out to all the powerful women mentioned here. You guys are cool. Rowie, Lucky, Mindy, MIA. Amazing. Just very creative people. And yeah, I didn't even get into like, now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I could have done a whole deep dive on like the evolution and the style, and I just really wanted to touch on it with me and, you know, how that's impacted me, I guess. I sound so narcissistic. I'm like, with me. I wanted to touch on me. Anyways, well, yeah, no, it did touch on a trying time, though. You know, that discomfort of trying to get dressed, I guess, and just feeling awkward in your own skin. Something I feel like most people can relate to, but whatever, I'm rambling. I mean, I could even go on and get a bit into how some brands have, you know, wrongfully tried to take cultural wear to another level. But I'm not going to do that right now. I think a lot of them actually speak for themselves. Oh, yikes. Okay. Anyways, if you have anyone that you look up to or find interesting, by the way, or inspiring, whether that's with self expression, how you dress, whether it's cultural, you know, like the fusion, kind of that blend we've been talking about this episode, or through music or more, whatever it is, shoot me a message. I want to know because I think that's interesting and I love learning more about that. So yeah, find me on Instagram at I'm Carmen Kang. So that's IMCARMENKANG. And yeah, hopefully we'll chat soon, okay? I know this was like a pretty all over the place one, but it was fun. So thank you for listening, and I look forward to chatting soon. So yeah, see ya.